This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and your radio.
Let's go through the papers now with former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and political consultant Emma Burnell. And very good morning, thanks for coming back. Emma, kick us off with COP27 and the fact that Rishi's not going.
He's not going to COP27, but he's also got rid of Alok Sharma and the Climate Minister from the Cabinet. So it feels like there's quite a big movement against the emphasis that certainly Boris Johnson's government had on climate change, which I think is a real shame and a real mistake, actually. I think there's a real space for Rishi's whole I'm the grown-up in the room position to actually show that you can be really keen on climate change and not be a Just Stop Oil type protester. And really, anti-climate change is mainstream now. And I think it's really important. And also, we were talking earlier about energy security. The things that we need to address climate change are a big part of that. And I've also, he's said previously he wants to have a huge focus on R&D. Well, what does he think they're going to research and develop? We have such an opportunity to be world leaders.
But you don't need Alok Sharma to move that along. What did he do at COP26 apart from cry at the end?
Well, I mean, he cried because he was trying desperately to work behind the scenes, and sadly, we didn't get as much as we wanted.
You like that?
Sorry,
one?
yeah, I did like that one, and I think you're right. I'm not sure that the Prime Minister. Well, let's remove that. The Prime Minister doesn't need to attend, okay? But there are an awful lot of things going on that require his attention. Now, I agree that we need to look at R&D, especially in renewables, but does it require a cabinet position for a minister? As Alok Sharma can do his job without having to be attending cabinet. You can look at what's going on at COP. I'm not buying that it's so important that you have to be there. As long as you put policies in place in your country, we are doing our bit, and there are other countries across the world that aren't. And I do wonder sometimes, going to these conferences, sitting there crying, as Stephen just mentioned, and navel-gazing doesn't actually get you anywhere. And I also think it's a bit of a waste of time if you're not going to take stuff forward afterwards, which we haven't.
But what does it say about Britain in that our Prime Minister isn't going, and neither is Prince Charles, who is now King? He's not going either. So Britain is being very poorly represented?
Well, that's it. I mean, this is an international conference. It's about international negotiation and representation. And I think it's not just the should he, shouldn't he go to this one meeting. I think there's a lot of signalling happening with the not going to the meeting and the reduction in the roles just before we have the new budget that we know is going to be about cutting spending. It just seems to be signalling how much this is being reduced as a priority, and that's what concerns me.
I don't know. All these COP meetings, everyone flies in, burning huge amounts of fuel. And
actually, I was talking to an MP who's going very slowly to COP, so there are people trying, I do promise.
Let's have a look at big tech growth, Claire, on the Financial Times, which is all slowing down.
It is, and it's quite interesting that investors' love of big tech companies is fading away. And I think it's incumbent upon those companies to be able to show where their money is going to come from, not just say it is cloud-based, it is wonderful, artificial intelligence is the way forward. They don't have any plans. And it seems that Mark Zuckerberg and Meta are the worst culprits of this, for not telling people where the money will come from. It's just, it will come. And people look back to the dot-com bubble of, over a decade ago, where people got very burnt with tech companies. It's very easy to set one up. It's very easy to say that you have all of this capability, but if it isn't there, then that money is just gone. So I think it's not a surprise, and especially when everybody is cutting back on that kind of spending, to put your money into something that you can't physically see, hold, understand necessarily. I think that moment has really gone. So those tech companies either need to come up with some coherent plan to assure us all that if they do have artificial intelligence, it's being used for the right reasons, they're not just mining data and selling it, or that they physically have a product that will benefit the population as a whole.
Meta's losing billions, isn't it, at the minute? Because well, he's pumping billions into it and nothing's actually coming out the other end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you mentioned the tech bubble of I think it was the early 2000s, and that was a kind of free-for-all Wild West thing. I think what's happened now is slightly different in that instead of it being the plaything of lots of mad young entrepreneurs, it's now the plaything of about 3 blokes just wandering around being super billionaires going, I know everything and everything's going to go, and actually the markets are finally waking up and going, actually I don't think you do know everything. The metaverse that you're completely obsessed with doesn't seem to be working, doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, no one really knows what it's for.
No, I think there's a lack of trust now.
Yeah.
Certainly I feel it. You worry, don't you, about handing over all your data
Yeah.
or using a card and then suddenly things come up charged to your card and you can't figure out what they are at all, and the trust has gone.
And I think we are wary and wary of that. There's a saying that if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. And I think we're more and more aware of that when it comes to Facebook. And I don't know about you, but my Facebook experience is worse and worse, with the same adverts repeated again, awful stuff that I'm never going to click on. And I feel like it both Facebook and Twitter have just seemed to be tipping into that deeply uncool
Do you know,
world.
you feel like you're being conned all the time.
Yeah.
You do.
Tricked into an advert or
You
tricked
are,
to
to
subscribing to
clicking on something and then it takes you off somewhere else, and I think it's a really toxic space as well, especially when you look at Twitter, and you know, we do use it for work purposes, majority of us here. It's a really toxic space.
It is.
And they're not doing anything about that.
Thankfully, we can ignore it now because we're out of time. Thank you both very much indeed. We'll talk about chirping birds in the real world.
Yes, I want to hear about that. That sounds
Make us
cool.
all feel better.
Absolutely. Much better than Twitter.
It will.
Yes, true.
Yes.
Absolutely.